Hello and welcome to another Bodgit and Leggit video. Now we have a 2008 Opel Astra behind us, an Astra H. This is the 1.7. So it's the Z17 DTH engine, and we have a crank no start. Now, a couple of things. This engine has been replaced. I have fixed it. This is the third time you're doing this video because things happened, wanted to put other information in there and things got very confusing. So I wanted to show you that because kind of stick with me on this. I'll show you the way I did it and then I'll show you the way you can get stung very, very easy on this. Essentially, when we use the oscilloscope, the readings are all correct, even though the car is wrong. So stay tuned for that. So it could really, really confuse you and get you stuck. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through what I did, the fix, then I'm going to show you another way if you went through the oscilloscope. But I am going to show you, once you go through the oscilloscope, a way you can get around not being caught. But it might not necessarily be the first thing. Well, it wouldn't be. You wouldn't necessarily think to do this when looking at the waveforms. So it should be really interesting. And let's get cracking. Sorted. This is the DHC. It's the engine code. And like I said, crank, no start, no codes. And the history is engine's been changed and crank no start. And apparently it's been to a couple of garages, still no good. So I've already fixed it. I'm going to run through how I fixed it, what I used, and a couple of things that, you know, when you're doing diagnostics that you really do need, just makes your life so much easier. And especially in this case, because this battery is a bit dodgy, and I'm going to show you the stuff I use so you know when you're doing tests, you know you're going to have a constant battery, because that's the hardest part. If your battery's weak and it's going down, you're doing tests, you're going to get invalid tests, and it might lead you in the wrong direction. Right, so we have a battery maintainer. Got this from Hubitools, and we also have the multimeter from Hubitools as well. I'll put down in the description where you can get these from if you contact them and stuff. So yeah, very, very important. Battery maintainer, multimeter. I've put it back to how it was, so it's now crank no starts. We also used the old, let's move all this, the old silly scope, and I'll get all that to back up with my diagnostic tool cart. And I've got a few more stickers to put on it. Sorted. Right, so let's hook up the scan tool and see where I started. Right, so the first thing I did was have a visual look to see if I could physically see anything. I cut all these cable ties, so don't worry about that. We're going to show you the no codes and stuff like that. What I did do is when I was cranking it and it wouldn't start, I did squirt a little bit of easy start in it just to make sure it actually started. It was kind of the quick and easy, sturdiest test. The engine did fire up, so I knew, well then, you know, the engine kind of okay, and we was looking at other things. But when I had a good visual look, I couldn't see anything wrong. Sorry about the sun. The sun is now causing me a problem. And couldn't see anything physically wrong, so then we went to the scan tool after that. Right, I've just spent the last 20 minutes trying to hook up the snap-on machine to it, but for some reason it just won't do it, and I'm just sick of it. So I'm going to originally do it on the Vauxhall. The only reason I want to do it on the snap-on one is there's a bigger screen, you can see it easier. As you can see, there's no fault code, so what I did, I went into the engine management, or the live data should I say, and I just selected all the PIDs that were available. And I wanted to see if I could see anything kind of unusual. So complete list. Now when you do select a complete list, be aware that it is a bit slow. Any machine is. So, you know, give it a few seconds for it to, you know, come up with something. So what I did is I visually went down everything just to make sure everything was kind of okay. And as we can see, the sensors, like the map sensor, that's reading something. I wasn't bothered about the readings, just if they're reading something. We can see the map sensors reading something, throttle position. You know, we have got some sensors reading something. And I was like, okay, well then that kind of proves we've got kind of something there. In the OEM software, you can get a lot more data PIDs, but this will give you an idea. So what I essentially wanted to do, well actually what I'll do is, I'll get to that because there is a few bits I want to get in there. So let me just get to that list. We'll go to scan. We don't go through OBD2 because with Vauxhalls and stuff like that and Astras, it is difficult. OBD2 sometimes doesn't give you the kind of the best PIDs for this car, or the best anything really. The other good thing about this tool is if you don't know what engine it is, you can do, so you can go back and you can do an engine search. You press it and it will tell you after it's scanned what engine, and there we go, what engine is in your car. So that's handy if you don't know. So I'm just going to go into live data and we're going to have a lot more PIDs now. So I'm going to go select. Now we've got a lot more PIDs. I'm just going to select all of them. So you've got battery voltage, you've got everything. I haven't got my battery maintainer on at the minute just because of the fans and stuff. It's a bit easier to talk when it's off. Now, again, we've got a throttle position. We've got some desired speeds here, which is handy, like desired engine speed at idle. So I looked down these and I saw we had some kind of readings, air intake temperature, we've got voltage. Like I said, I wasn't worried about if they were wrong or right. I just wanted to see if we had any type of readings. And as you can see, we do. So at least we know the car isn't completely dead. We kind of know that anyway because it's actually turning with the key. So what I did then, let me just get back to, I'll just kind of do an overview of what I did. Because there's relays and everything. I checked everything, and everything on this data PID was actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. So we had camshaft speed, engine speed. So what I did is I tried to turn it. You can see that. As you can see, we got readings. Hopefully you could see that. That's why I wanted to get the bigger screen so you could see. But another important one I wanted to get was the rail pressure. Desired pressure, what the rail fuel pressure is actually reading. And again, we'll just try and turn the key. And as you can see, it hit the mark. So I kind of was happy there. I knew we had some power going through the system. And then what I did next, you'll see. Right, so what do we know? We know the engine's been changed, we know it doesn't start, we know it starts on easy start, and we know all the sensors that the machine can read, you know, map everything, was reading something. So as I turned the key, the readings went up, they were doing something. So we know there's some sort of communication with the car. But what I did notice is, and again, I'm going to try and show it on camera, but it is kind of difficult. I've talked about it before, and it's like a dry engine. You can tell when like a diesel isn't getting diesel. It's like a dry start. So I'll try and get that through. I will try and get that through on camera, but obviously the microphones and stuff pick it up different to what your ears do. So, don't know if you can hear that, if that kind of came through. So I was like, okay, well, all the other sensors are reading. The injectors, they're the only things I can't see. It sounds like we have like a dry engine. I mean, is the timing slipped? You know, there's loads of reasons, but it started an easy start, and it started too well an easy start. So I'm not worried about the timing, even though it's a possibility, but I'm not worried about that yet. So what I went for is I went for the injectors. Now there's a few ways of actually testing these, and this is where you need information. This is where all your, you know, whatever you happen to use for your wiring diagrams and stuff like that, this is where this comes in. So what it is, I got all the pinouts for the injectors, even what the ohms should be, and to give you an idea, the resistance check should be between 0.25 to 1.5 ohms on each of these injectors. I tested them all and they're all within spec. No point me showing you that, but again, that's where a multimeter comes in. Ohm it out, so I knew then that our injectors, as regards an ohm test anyway, they were kind of okay. What I then did, I took off the return pipe, just one of the return pipes, just wanted to see if there was kind of diesel coming through. There was, but not really what I would expect. So then what I decided to do was get the pinouts of the injectors. Now, normally you can see there's one wire that's the same color on all the injectors. So we know that's our 12 volts or whatever it happens to be. We know that's our power, and we know our other wire is our signal wire. So then what I wanted to do was a relative compression test, just to make sure that the compression in the engine is good. Because again, with it being a diesel, just because it started on easy start, it might not be good enough to start on diesel. You know, there's loads of things. So I'm going to hook up the relative compression test. I'm going to trigger it off injector number 1. So we're going to see a trigger and we're going to see a waveform. So let's see what that looks like. Right, so with my wiring diagram I could see that the ECU controls both sides of the circuit. We've got a power and we've got a ground or a signal on each injector. Now, the power wire is all the same color on all the injectors, so that's how you know if it's the power wire. Signal wire is a different color on all of them. So what I then did is I got my resistance for my injectors, so I checked my resistance for my injectors and they all passed. Firing order. Very, very important to know your firing order. And these are the injector pins, and these are the ECU pins for each injector and each pin. So, what I decided to do then was do an ohms test with me multimeter. Again, fantastic job. I'll put a link in the description for that. That was from Hubitools as well. I wanted to do an ohms test. Not so much a continuity test. I don't like doing continuity tests because if there's one strand of wire, it will make circuit and it will beep and you might think it's all right. So I wanted to do a continuity, a resistance check. So what we'll do is we'll get this up in the air and we'll do that. Now I'm not going to do them all because you know it's going to be boring for the video, but I'm going to show you one of them. So what I've done is I've got signal 1 back probed on the injector. So if I now get this here, and we know control pin 1 equals pin 40 or B47 on the ECU. So I need to lift this up and put my multimeter to pin 47. So I'm going to get this up in the air, we're going to do that and we're going to see what happens. Right, here's our ECU plug and here is our wires. You can see our main 4 power feed wires. We'll just get you in closer. Oh, that camera's now turning. There you go. You can see the 4 main power wires. I know the pins. I know what this should be because I've got it all written down. I know it's a straight connection, so there's nothing in between. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to do an ohms test for this particular time, just because you cannot see the meter, which is just up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a continuity test. I know there is no problem. Otherwise, do an ohms test because continuity test isn't the answer. The reason I'm doing a continuity test now is so you can hear the beep because I can't get the meter and everything in all in one shot. So what I'm going to do, get a back probe, turn my meter on, turn it to continuity, but should be ohms, like we said. Injector number 1. Okay, so I've got that back probed. I've got the back probe on the power wire, which should be pin 16, which is B16 on the ECU. So what I did is I went through each individual wire and I went to pin 16, put it in first. I didn't get anything. Okay, I thought, okay, well then maybe we've got a break in the wire. I did it with all 8 wires and they were all essentially open circuit. And I'm thinking to myself, in a group of 20, 30 wires, just 8 wires, the 8 wires I needed just happened to be broke. That doesn't sound really logical, does it? So then I'm like, what I'm going to do now? This doesn't make sense. I'm getting nothing. Open circuit on 8 wires. So what I decided to do then is leave it plugged in to one injector because I kept changing the injector's power signal, power control, blah, blah, blah. So now I've left it in, pin number 1, or injector number 1. Then I went through each individual injector power wire until, well, just to see. and absolutely nothing. But then the last wire I did, hear that? And then I thought, hold on a second. So I did it again. I swapped the wires over, I went through it, and I got resistance on every single wire. So then I'm like, well, the wires are okay. I've tested the injectors, they ohm out okay. What's going on? Are they blocked, or is there another issue? Don't know. Then, took me a few minutes to click, but what I did is I wrote down the numbers where they actually join together, and I wrote them down, and then I realized, hold on a second, like injector number 1 is injector number 4, injector number 4 is injector number 1. Well, that's weird. How has the computer got them messed up? Is my wiring diagram correct? Have I got the wrong one? I got the wrong wiring diagram. It's a possibility. So then I'm scratching my head, and then I just said, you know what? I'm going to disconnect everything and put it back together. Even though when I looked at them wires, they look 100% perfect. So let's see what happens once I did that. Right, so I must admit, it took me a few minutes to figure out. I know there's going to be people out there saying, oh, I would have known straight away. And what's that? Is that cow? Dog? Beaver? Oh no, it's bullshit. Right, so let's just move this for the minute. As you can see, and like I said, all these were plugged in, they were all cable tied in place really nicely. Everything fell into place, so ignore all that. As you can see, this is how the car came to me. This is injector number 1, 2, 3, 4. But the leads are 1, 2, 3, 4, not 1, 2, 3, 4. So the car is firing at completely the wrong time. Hence, that's why it's not starting. And then what's most probably happening is after a few seconds, the ECU is just shutting down because it realizes the problem, so it just doesn't keep dumping loads of fuel in. So what I decided to do then, just take my back probes out, was to undo all this. This is why we had the glow plug error, because obviously I've disconnected the glow plugs. So what I decided to do was essentially take this off, put that there. That's number 3. That's number 2. That's number 4. Let's see what happens now. Bingo! She's alive! Woo! So, fired right up, sorted, fixed, next one. But then I said, right, what I'll do is, I'll show another test, what you can maybe do, but, this is a big but, this is where it can really screw you up. Even when I was doing the test, it was screwing me up, even though I knew what was wrong. It took me a while to figure exactly what was going on. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to put these back to how they was. I'm going to set up my oscilloscope. So we're going to do a relative compression test, and we're going to spike it off one cylinder. I tried that, but I was getting a double fire from these because it's ticking over and trying to start. So it was making the waveforms really bad. And then the other problem is, which you have to be really careful of, just by firing off one cylinder is going to screw you up. Because, for example, I fire off this one here, which is number 4 because it's been put round the wrong way. I see one spike coming up and it's on top dead center. I know, okay, well that's cylinder number 1. So then it's 1, 3, 4, 2 is the firing order, but it's not, because it's opposite. It's firing off cylinder 4. So it's actually 3, 2, 1, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's completely messing with your head. So in this case, doing a relative compression test off one injector is no good. Then I thought, well, okay, well, I'll do it off 2 injectors. But the problem is I was getting double firing patterns, and the waveforms were looking awful. Just can't, well, you can, but it's very difficult to try and comprehend and very messy. So I decided not to do it. Then I was thinking, well, how am I going to do this differently? I know I can get different, you know, couple more ant clamps, but I don't have them. So I had to do it with the equipment I got. So what I decided to do, let's just put these back to how it was normally. So with this test, if you was to do a relative compression test, because you might thought, okay, well it's compression then, because you know everything's right, I've got power to my injectors, I've got signal, my wiring diagram was wrong, that's not a big deal, wiring diagrams are often wrong. So you're like, oh okay, so it's compression. Let's see my compression. So, relative compression test coming up. And the relative compression test, believe me, in this case, really screws with your head, really. Because as you can see now, when we're thinking we're firing off cylinder number 1, we're firing off cylinder number 4. When we think we're firing off cylinder number 2, it's number 3. Can you see what it's doing to your boat? It's doing your head in. So, it's really, really confusing. It's completely opposite. If you fire off cylinder number 1, but it's actually cylinder number 4, so you look at it on the waveform and you say, okay, yeah, that's cylinder number 1. And then you look at the waveform, you well, I've got compression. What the hell is going on? Okay, let's fire off 2 injectors. It's still fucking right. What's going on? I'm going to explain. Before I explain, before I get you back to the computer, just remember, we are 4, 3, 2, 1. That's the way the order of the wiring plugs is now. So I'm going to fire off cylinder number 4 and cylinder number 4 and 3, but in our heads we're thinking it's 1 and 2. Do you see what I'm saying? It's just mind-blowing. I forgot to explain how did I get away from the double firing issue, and it's up here for thinking, down there for dancing. You know what I mean? Because I didn't have the enough amp clamps and stuff like that. What I decided to do was disconnect the ones I was working on. Well, in fact, I can disconnect them all. That's not really a big deal. Now, what happens now is the computer, after a couple of seconds, realizes there's something going on and shuts the injectors down. But in that few seconds, I only get 1 strike. So the computer realizes something wrong, ECU shuts down to protect itself, to protect whatever. But in them few seconds, I get what I need. So I'm going to back probe these while they're disconnected. And again, that's not a thing you would normally do. I'm only doing that because, trying to show on video with the double strike and everything, it's very, very difficult to try and, make the waveforms look nice and kind of easy for the old camera and for people to understand. So that's the way I did it. See? Bloody thinking. So let me get my amp clamp around the battery. I'm going to fire off cylinders 1 and 2, which is in fact 3 and 4. I'm confusing myself even more. Let's look at the waveforms and let's see what we think we see. Or do we? I don't know. Let's see. By this stage, I bet you're confused because, to be honest, so am I, and I know what's going on. I know what's coming next, and I'm still confused. Get you on the screen. Let's get these waveforms sorted properly and let's see what it looks like. Now for the first test, we've got it on injector number 1, which is in fact number 4. We have our low amp probe set at 60 amps, which is 10 millivolts per division. We have our screen ready. Let's see what happens. Right, I know I've got 3 channels up, but at the minute we're only working off 2. So let's make sure this is recording and go for it. Now, should be enough. Let's stop that. We'll zoom into our event and we'll see what the hell is going on. Now, as we can see, we have our relative compression test. And when you look at it, it all looks really, really good. Kind of same level, looks nice. Engine sounds good, and we've got cylinder number 1 here because we are probed off cylinder number 1. Cylinder number 1 lines up within the middle, so again you think, well, okay, so it's firing when it's supposed to. Oh, that's great, but you then pick your firing order, and you've got 1, 3, 4, 2, 1, 2, 1, 3, 4, 2, 1, 3, 4, 2. And you think to yourself, that looks fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't forget, this is cylinder number 4. This should be over here. We think this is cylinder number 1, but it isn't. This is cylinder number 4. This is where this test, in this case, would really screw with your head. So then what we do is, okay, well, let's fire another injector. Injector number 2, which is in fact injector number 3. I hope you're still following, people. Right, so let's do that. Let's start this off again. Right, this is where it gets really confusing, because we've now back probed both of them, and we've got 1, 3, 4, 2. I mean, hold on a second. This is number 2. It lines up. 1, 3, 4, 2. But don't forget, people, this is number 4. This is number 3. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see how now this really screws you with your head? If you were to look at this normally, 1, 3, 4, 2. We think this is number 1. We think this is number 2. We think, yeah, that's it. That's the right firing order. What the hell is going on? But it isn't. These are opposite. So when you read this waveform, you would think everything is fine. You would think the injectors are working when they're supposed to be working. You think absolutely everything is fine in this particular case. Now, this is where it gets really confusing, because now what would you do? What would you do from here? You'll say, okay, we've got good compression. Now we could take one out and actually, you know, take a proper compression read and then do some maths and actually see exactly what's going on here. But when you look at it, when you hear the engine, you know it's kind of okay. You look at our spikes, they fall in the right place, and you're like, what the hell is going on? So what I'm going to do to make this kind of actually work, I'm going to try and take out heater plug number 2 to get a dead cylinder. Once we have a dead cylinder and we know what that dead cylinder is, this then should make sense. But I defy anybody to have done this test first. Not sure what happened here, but I lost my microphone. So what I was saying, I defy anybody to have done this test first and to have realised just from this alone that the firing order was wrong. Anybody, I defy anybody. Right, for any of you long playing at home, we got a heater plug out. Now, if you know anything about Astras, you just know how dangerous this is. I think it'd be easier to break into Bucket and Palace and look at the Queen's knickers than getting this out. If you want to do that, of course. So we got it out. I couldn't get out cylinder number 2. That just felt a bit dodgy, so this is cylinder number 1. This now should give us the proper picture. And I'm just kind of showing you this because this is, you know, sometimes how things can lead you astray. Because off that waveform, I defy anybody to see a problem with that waveform. You won't see a problem with it. But now, we will. We will now see the picture. This is the money shot. This is what happens, well, you know, this is the money shot. We'll keep it PG. So, let's hook this up. It's all still hooked up, but let's turn you onto the screen and see what it looks like now. All right, we haven't changed any settings. Everything's still where it is. The only difference is now cylinder number 1 should be dead. So we have our yellow trace on cylinder number 1, or injector number 1. We have our green trace on injector number 2, and we have our blue trace is for our relative compression. Right. What I need to do is turn on my ank clamp. That might help. Nah, ank clamp is on. It is zeroed. Let's try again. Boom! Boom! The money shot. Oh, 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 get back, get back. Oh. Look at that. Now, this makes sense, people. Can you see? So, our yellow trace, according to our wires, is cylinder number 1. But as you can see, we have taken out cylinder number 1. So let's do the firing order again. 1, 3, 4, 2. That makes sense. This is 1, 2, 3. 1, 3, 4. This is 4, not 1, like I said. They're switched. This is number 3. That makes sense. So now from this, you can now work out that there is a problem. There is something, and you can see it. you can actually see it because we've got a dead cylinder. And we know 100% this is cylinder number 1 because I've just taken out heater plug number 1. So, there we go, people. And just to kind of prove it, if you still are unsure or doubt me for whatever reason, let me keep this on the same screen. I'm going to move to my plug that was on number 4, which is now number 1. So this plug was here on number 4. Let's go back to the screen and we'll see that that yellow trace now will match our dead cylinder. So let's record again. Boom! The second money shot. This must be an expensive film to have 2 money shots in it. Now, people, now look. Number 1 matches up with the dead cylinder. Boom! There we go. So, what does that tell us? It tells us not to do this test in the first place because of this would be an invalid test. But it also goes to show that if you was to do this test, for example, just to check your compression, just to make sure your injectors were firing, because like I said, all the wires, the powers and everything were perfect. So you might do this test, and with the old screen we had up, you can clearly see the trouble we would have had, and you would have carried on because everything matched, everything looked okay. The information was, the waveforms are correct, but the information was wrong. So people, there you go. How cool is that? Right, so there we go. It just goes to show you have to be careful depending on the test you're doing, because for all intensive purposes, that looked perfect. I couldn't see anything wrong with the waveform when you first look at it. It's only because I knew from doing my other test, swinging my eye, that it was wrong. So there we go. And what I'm going to do now is put the heater plug back in. I hope you appreciate me taking that heater plug out, by the way, because like I said, that is seriously dangerous. And yeah, so we got to the bottom of it. And it's just to be aware, you know, when you have these sort of things, you still need to know how to read it. You still need to know exactly what you're looking at. You need to know your system working. You need to know everything. These injector patterns, don't really look at these because I've disabled it, because otherwise it's double firing system. It just looked messy and blah, blah, blah. I just didn't want to get into it. I wanted a nice, simple, easy pattern like that, and that's the best way I found it. So I know people, you can't test it, blah, blah, blah. I'm only showing you, okay? Relax. Because there's millions of experts out there, especially on YouTube comments. So, that's it, people. There we go. Hope you learned something, because I know a few people have already. So there we go. Look, interesting video. We got it fixed. That's all that matters. Maybe the other garages did something like that and thought, you know, because when you think about it, we check the injectors. The next thing is, you know, take the injectors out and get them checked and all that sort of stuff. But we didn't have to do that because we went down a different route. But the other thing is, you got to remember, wherever my piece of paper is here, at first I kind of thought maybe my wiring diagram is wrong, because it does happen. You know, just because you've got information doesn't mean your information is right. You know, the other thing is, has this ever been changed in its life, like ECUs, the engine's wiring? We know the engine's been changed, but what I'm saying is, when you come into a car, it could have a different wiring loom in with different colours. They all still do the same thing, but they're different colours, and that can throw you off. These are so many things you have to think about, which you cannot predict until you get the car in. And if you've got different wires compared to your wiring diagram, which is wrong? Is it the wiring diagram, or is it the wires in the car? This is where it all kind of puts up. This problem could have taken, you know, hours upon days upon everything to try and find. I don't know how long the other garages had it. It just goes to show, use that up there. Don't necessarily always rely on everything. But we did get some sexy waveforms. So there we go, people. Hope it helps. Please like, share, subscribe, all the usual. Don't forget, links up here, links down below. But most importantly, don't forget, get your hands dirty. See you for the next one. Sorted.